This is Newton North High School, and it's a comprehensive high school. We have about 2,000 students here. Newton is a relatively affluent community, and we have a very diverse, inclusive type of school. This is towards the end of a unit. We're transitioning from electricity to electricity and magnetism, and looking at how current affects magnetism and how magnetism can create a current. So we're looking really at the conceptual understanding of physics in this class. I'm going to remind you of the 4 rules for producing questions. The first one, I'm about to give you a prompt. I request that you take the time to ask as many questions as you can. Number 1. Number 2, you do not stop to discuss, judge, or answer the questions. Number 3, whoever is writing the questions, please write down every question exactly as stated. And then if it's a statement, please change it into a question. You might notice if you walk around the neighborhood that there are these boxes on telephone poles. Okay? I had a colleague once who thought they're batteries. They're not batteries. They're what we call transformers. And power lines from a power plant carry electricity at voltage is of about 1/3 of a million volts, about 345 volts or even more. Transformers like the one shown there in that picture, and you'll see them all over your neighborhood, reduce the voltage to 120 volts for home use. And the Q focus is connected to what we learned, but also maybe pushing us forward a little bit. So I'd like to use some scientific language in there and to really have them be able to feel comfortable with that language.
Yeah, so the second one is why or how does it transform the energy?
Who supplies the transformers? The power company?
Well, Optimus Prime Power. Who supplies transformers?
Like who makes them?
Who makes them?
Where do they get the electricity? How many transformers are around cities?
Are the transformers dangerous? Is used
To make a transformer?
Yeah, to make.
It's just fun to see the banter between them, and I'll notice students are building off each other's questions or taking questions in slightly different directions. So there's a real connection of the minds at that point between them, I think is really powerful. We're going to mark up our questions. We're going to mark them as open and closed-ended. What is the difference here between an open-ended and a closed-ended question? Who remembers the difference?
An open-ended question is a question that can be answered with an explanation. And a closed-ended question is something that's like a one-word answer, like yes or no, or a time. Good. So closed-ended can be answered with just a brief 1 or 2 words. Open-ended requires a full explanation. I'd like you to mark up your questions with C's and O's. C's for closed-ended and O's for open-ended. Take a couple of minutes to do that.
Closed.
Open. What happens when one breaks?
Yeah, I think that's open.
How do they transform power?
Open.
Who supplies the transformer?
Why do we use 120 volts at home? It's kind of close to.
Open, because
It depends how long the
different
street
size
is.
streets have different. Open.
Whatever you say.
So when we started it the first time, it was really a way for us to reflect on what we mean about questions and what we're looking for. And students, I think, there was a sort of an aha moment, like we can use closed questions for some things. They help us understand some things really well as we're trying to maybe just figure out the basics. And open questions are things that we can sort of reflect on and share as a group and expand on. So I want you to choose any 2 questions, not any 2. One has to be open, one has to be closed. Choose an open question and transform it into a closed-ended question. Take a closed-ended question and transform it into an open-ended question, please. All right? So review your list of questions and change one.
To open for.
Why do they need to reduce it?
Do they need to reduce?
How much extra voltage or how much unused voltage is there?
I want you to go back and review all your questions, and I'd like you to choose what are the 3 most important to you in your group. First, you're going to share out your 3 priority questions. I'll take notes and I'll write them down. You're going to share out your reason for choosing those 3 priority questions. And then also share out the 2 questions that you flipped. At the end of the process, students come up with 20, 30 questions, and I think they recognize that some of them are off base and not as important. But there are a kernel of those that really, I think, tend to grab a lot of the overall questions, the tenor of a bunch of questions that can sort of encapsulate a lot of what they're asking.
Our close to open was who makes the transformers, and we changed that to how do they make the transformers.
And our open to closed was how do they fix them to who fixes them.
First priority question is number 2. How is voltage reduced?
We chose this because there's a very big difference between 345,000 to 120 and how it gets from one to the other.
Is any energy lost in the process?
The rationale for that one?
We chose that one because the prompt was talking about how this huge amount of energy is into your house in just 120 volts, which is a really big difference. So we wanted to know what happens to all the energy and where it goes or if any of it's lost.
Having them focus those down allows them to pursue those questions in a way that is meaningful to them. Lots of really provocative and interesting questions here that I would not have. It's what I like about this process. You guys always push me in new ways to think about it. So I'm about to give you a sheet, and I ask that you choose any 3 priority questions, either from your group or from any of the groups, and I'll leave this up here. I'll see if I can get more of them up at the same time, that you want to pursue a little more deeply. I don't think I realized it until I did it with my students of how powerful that is when students are able to actually voice their own ideas and share them, and how they've gotten there, and reflecting on that it really makes it, I think it really makes it their own. Good learning involves reflecting on what we've learned and how we've learned, and sharing that learning not only with ourselves but with others. I think articulating that is such a powerful process.
In physics, there's rules. So when you ask questions, you can understand those rules much better.
Like for math, you'd ask how you would solve a problem, but for science, you'd ask how it would work.
Only in physics we've used this, and it certainly is not just the teacher telling you something. You're thinking of something for yourself.
Every discipline is about a process of understanding the world. Science has a very specific process, and I think foremost, one of the most important parts about science is knowing how to ask a question.
It allowed me to ask my own questions and figure out what I wanted to know. Kind of made me more interested in the topic.
The more you ask questions, the more you can understand what's going on.
I like working in groups because I like to see how other people think.
And I think that's the great advantage of working in groups, that you get to see what other people think of and you get the surprises.
Question formulation technique has really surprised me every time I've used it, and it's sort of humbled me. It's allowed me to really get a sense of what students are thinking about in ways that I really wouldn't have imagined. It opens up where students are and where they want to go and what they want to learn, and it's totally flipped a lot of how I think about my practice and how we're going to progress through the unit.
One thing I will say about David, which really struck me, is that this helped him be a more reflective practitioner. And ultimately, professional learning is about being more reflective, and we can all benefit from being more reflective. And that really was his closing message to me, was really powerful. Also, when you have a cohort of people that are really eager to do something and they're motivated and do it as a team, is really important. So when I see our 6th grade social studies teachers, for example, do it as a team, that's really valuable, because ultimately we see students working in teams, asking questions. We want teachers working in teams as well.